My name is Bob Wilhite, and this is my show with my son Axel Wilhite, titled Aerials. Most of the work in the exhibition refers to our passion for objects that have been in the air. This section is a number of sculptures that I started making in 2009 that are models of nuclear weapons. And here is the Fat Man bomb that I made in 2009. It's the actual size. I made it as a wooden model would have been made in the day when the Fat Man bomb was used. What I did is I went to the Nuclear Museum in Albuquerque and measured a steel model of the actual bomb, came back and in my studio laid out a piece of paper and drew it out, and for a month tried to figure out how to build it so that it could support itself, since it was going to be 10 feet 11 inches or 10 feet 8 inches by 60 inches in diameter. This piece is called a Davy Crockett. This is the actual size. It could be set off in the field by a soldier. It would go about 1.25 miles, and potentially the radiation could develop the guy that set it off, which I thought was atrocious and worthy of a sculpture.
Hi, my name is Axel Wilhite. These are paintings that I've been working on for the last couple of years. They're acrylic and watercolor on paper. The subject is looking at Los Angeles, surveying these interstitial moments that we don't really pay attention to, driving in our car. And a theme that I've been playing with a lot is technology and the way that it rips us away from our lived experiences. In a weird way, driving in our cars is one of the few moments that we have in which can develop ourselves, develop our own thoughts. And also, unfortunately, it's an amount of time that sort of disappears. I mean, there's no record of it. These are all scenes from my own commutes around the city. The process was that I would take pictures out of my car window and force myself to pay attention to kind of the most mundane and banal scenes. These are a series of paintings that I started doing a few years ago. I took my computer to get upgraded. The technician gave me the discarded card back. I was looking at it and I couldn't throw it away. I mean, it was too intricate and beautiful, threaded through with all of these precious metals, and there's no way that these memory cards could have been made in any other age. They're such symbols of our current digital landscape in which we live. It's really kind of about the impoverishment of our reality.
This is another model of a nuclear weapon. I found out through my research that when the wall fell and communism fell in Russia, that the Russians lost 110 briefcase nukes. And I felt it was so atrocious that I wanted to make a sculpture that would represent them. And so this is a briefcase nuke, or my adaptation of one. And the elements inside, I wanted to create some tension. And so I went back to Picasso's Guernica and took some details from the painting. And that's where the two cones that are in the side coming together to create that tension comes from. This is the first time I've exhibited my artwork with Axel. This is a rare opportunity. I felt for a number of years that Axel was an incredible artist, and this was our chance to show that. And with this exhibition, our interests overlapped, and with the title of Aerials, it was a perfect opportunity for us to put our artwork together.
These pieces I started doing about 5 years ago. I was struck by this image of books flying around. I had the idea for an installation in which the Bible and the Constitution chase each other around. I wanted a whole library of flying books. Just the thought of our ideologies becoming mechanized and militarized and our narratives being transformed by technology in some way was really appealing to me. This is one of the books. They all fly. This one has a camera. Most of them have cameras. I've hollowed them all out.
This is the photo documentation of a performance that I did in 1975. I came back from New York and I had a number of pieces that I wanted to achieve, and this was one of them. I had a number of friends that were making paintings that were entirely about process, and yet the process was something that an audience wasn't allowed to see, and that bothered me. So what I did is I did a series of paintings in which the process was something that the audience would see. I did a number of brushstroke paintings with enamel on asbestos paper. While the enamel was wet, I sprinkled a lot of gunpowder into the wet enamel and it stuck. The central picture here is my studio at the time, which was a Chinese laundry, and one of the walls was plaster over cement brick, and the other wall was lath and plaster, so it was flammable. I put two snap lines, red snap lines, about eye level, in the gallery on opposite walls, the two that I mentioned. And I hung all of the paintings on the lath and plaster wall. And when someone would come in to see the exhibition, I took a painting down, hung it on the plaster over the brick wall that wasn't flammable, and lit them on fire for them. So every person that came to the exhibition was able to see the process and the painting. This is the documentation of a performance that I did in 1974. It's one of the first performances that I did. I felt that I wanted to make an object and make it achieve some Herculean feat. Since I was living in New York City and I had a passion for airplanes, I thought, what could be better than making an airplane and flying it off of the Empire State Building? Along with my friend Chris Burton, who's in the picture, I went at exactly the time the Empire State Building opened and carried a bag with the wings in another bag, so everything was camouflaged. I was just carrying a bag. And we took the elevator to the observation level at the Empire State Building, and all of the guards were inside where they could stay warm. And I sat outside and put the plane together and flew it off. The guardrail is fairly tall and has these curved spikes that come around. So I flew the plane off initially. It hit the wind because the wind is crazy at the top of the building. The plane went straight up and hit the building and came back right where I was standing. I thought, oh my God. So I looked at the plane and it was still in good shape, straightened the wings, and I tried it again, threw it a little harder, and did the same thing. Went up and hit the building, except this time, instead of coming down right where I was standing, it flipped over and flew and missed the guardrail and just sailed away. And the plane went 14 blocks. I was concerned that it would end up on the top of a building, but it didn't. It went 14 blocks and it hit a taxi cab. The taxi cab driver told me something that made me really happy in a way, because art has a lot to do with scale and our perception of it. He told me that he was driving along and he saw the plane originally, and he had been a photographer during the Korean War, and initially he couldn't tell how big it was, and he thought that the plane, which is called a thermic trooper, was carrying troops. He at first was panicked, and he didn't know how big the plane was until it hit his car. And he got out, picked it up. There was a sign on the back of the plane that said, "Reward $20, return and condition is found." In the day, $20 was $50. And he came back, met us in front of my studio, and I gave him his money, and we had coffee and bagels together, and he took off. Behind me is a replica of the plane. It's not papered as the original one was, but it's perfect because it shows the airplane that I flew off the Empire State Building.
These paintings were originally conceived to be paired with the drone books, actually. The initial inspiration was they were sort of the dreaming life of these books that had been stripped of their contents, but given the ability to fly. You know, you look up at the sky and you can dream, or you can exercise your imagination.
These are gliders that I've been making for about the last 15 years. They're from very thin pieces of wood that I cut on the table saw, all exotic woods, rosewood or ebony, either butterfly wings or dragonfly wings. I wanted to make an actual glider out of them and make them into airplanes, which is the addition of a certain type of technology that the actual insects did not use to fly. And I appreciated that. These are gliders. They're pinned like an insect would be displayed. And I made these frames so that they could be in a shadow box. They would be protected with a piece of plexiglass in the front. I originally made a number of gliders without the central stick, using just a cigarette paper to hold the wings together. And I flew a number of them, and even flew a number of them off of buildings. This was an extension of that idea.
The work in this show is work that is from your youth, when you were my age. Those interests have persisted since that time, and you raising me, you traumatized me in a certain way, and it's reflective of your interests.
You're darn right. One of the things that I did was, for Axel's 14th birthday, I loaded him in my pickup truck and we drove to Tehachapi, where I had arranged for him to have a glider lesson and go soaring. And I went up too. I was up for 20 minutes. Axel was in the air for about an hour and a half. And the co-pilot for Axel told me, he said, "You were probably out here because of your interests. But I want to tell you this. By the end of the time that Axel was in the air, he was flying the plane." And all I wanted to do was plant a seed, because the idea of flying an airplane is a really rich experience, and I wanted him to have that and possibly check back into that at a later date.